WinZero, your Wingecarribee Net Zero Emissions Environment Group. We're partnering with Landcare and with RegenAction. As a group effort, we'd like to thank you all. I'd like to hand over to Councillor Rachel Russell for the acknowledgement of country.
Yuran Yura Jean Yuran Gurugul Gundangura Nyura. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of these lands, waterways and skies, the Ngandangara. It deserves the utmost respect because it is only thanks to their very careful management of resources that over millennia that we still have the clean air, the clean water and the clean country today. Kia ora.
Thank you, Rachel. We would not be able to welcome so many of you here tonight to hear from the excellent lineup of speakers without the generous provision of this space by Bowral High School. So thank you, Bowral High. The first of our excellent lineup of speakers is Dr. Ian Wright. So Dr. Ian Wright is a lecturer and researcher in water science and management at Western Sydney University. His research examines freshwater ecology, water chemistry, and the cumulative impacts of urban pollution on rivers and catchments. Prior to academia, Ian worked extensively in the water industry, primarily with Sydney Water, informing his applied approach to policy and practice. He regularly provides expert testimony to the New South Wales Land and Environment Court on environmental regulation and mining proposals. Ian is a recognised science communicator. I listened to a podcast by him on my way here. Ian contributes to public awareness on PFAS, contamination, and water quality risks. And he has had numerous appearances across the ABC and 9 outlets. So welcome, Dr. Ian Wright.
Thanks very much for the lovely welcome. I echo the remarks. Thank you so much, Bowral High School. Go Bowral. I'm Ian Wright. That's a photo of me with Kat, who you're about to meet. She's one of the many stars of this show. That's a picture of the Wingecarribee River in the background. That's not a normal river colour in my world. Do you think that's right? Let's not be in a competition with the Yarra River for the brownest river in Australia. Let's keep the beautiful soil of the Wingecarribee area in the land, not the river. I've seen this before. I know the Southern Highlands is a developer's paradise and you've got building sites everywhere, but I want to see some fines for sediment pollution. It's ridiculous. I didn't expect applause there, but thank you. Also, I'm going to do a little ad at the end. I do research on water tanks. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people here drink from water tanks? Okay, wow. I want to talk to some of you at the end, and I'll have another slide. But just look at the right. Down the bottom of your water tanks, there's a sludge layer that I'm very, very concerned about because it's full of metals. But we're talking about the Wingecarribee River. It needs your help. I've got a role for everyone. I've got homework for you. I have worked in and around the Wingecarribee River and other Southern Highlands rivers for years. In fact, apologies if I just call it the Warragamba catchment. Can I do that? Because it covers a lot of local government areas. But in particular, I was alerted to the closure of the Berrima, the Medway coal mine. And water pollution from that mine actually got a lot worse when the mine shut. So commercial production of coal stopped. It allowed about 15% of the mine to flood. It mobilised a lot of metals. And that is actually a picture of upstream on the right and downstream. Now, you don't need to be a water chemist to spot there's a difference. That difference was super high concentration of metals. Nickel and zinc were right up there, manganese and iron. My former PhD student, Nakia, is looking in his net in vain for aquatic life, the sort of invertebrates that cats, platypus would like to eat, and they need to eat a lot of them. They're like 5-year-olds at a birthday party. They need to eat a lot of their body weight every day. But there was almost nothing there. It was severe pollution until the EPA got involved. The EPA are here tonight. I've worked with them a lot over the years. We've sometimes had a kind of a difficult relationship, but they are wonderful people and they're on the front line. They stand between the community, industry and the environment, and they do the best job they can. And here the EPA, with Bowral's consent, got that effluent out of the river. They were treating it. There's no easy answer, and most mines and pollution sources aren't fixed, but they help broker a really good solution. I still think it's happening. But a lot of people were invited to come tonight. Only the EPA have come. They're talking soon, so I want everyone to be grateful of that. But Sydney Water New South Wales were invited to come because they've got a very big role in this too, and they've got a big list of homework. I'm going to give that to them later. Problem 2, after the sediment in the river, and your very brown river, is blue-green algae. That is actually a picture from a Hawkesbury campus dam, and that's my stunt double, Tim Smith, that's actually his name, taking a sample, and he's actually looking at dissolved oxygen in the water. But that greenish, oily paint, that's a severe blue-green algal bloom. Are you aware that your river frequently has blue-green algal blooms? A show of hands, please, if you're aware that it regularly suffers this. You're not in trouble, thank you. You're not in trouble. But that is actually today's news. There is a blue-green algal bloom right now, and that's at Berrima. It's green. They use the green symbol. I don't understand this because for me, green is go. Green is good. Green isn't good with algae. That means you've got the first stage of an algal bloom. And what happens is, as the temperature warms up, the nutrients are there. Whatever sunlight can get into the river through that sediment, it's starting to grow. That was the results last year. For 6 months in a row, it got to the next stage. That's the amber stage. That's hit the brakes. We're talking about toxic blue-green algae in the river. If and when it goes to the red stage, that's when you shouldn't have any physical contact, you shouldn't drink it, your livestock shouldn't drink it, and wildlife shouldn't. And it happens. You've got a real blue-green algal problem here. And by the way, that's a very useful website for updates. And there are several red blooms at the moment around the state. So a terrible fish kill happened in the Darling River and the Wilcannia area a few years ago. That was associated with blue-green algae. Who knows about the role of Water New South Wales? Some people do. Very, very important agency because they look after the catchments and the storages. They're a very important part of the problem and the solution. EPA produced an excellent report that is available. This is a really important report. I got in trouble a couple of years ago because I made a public comment about the head of the EPA and I gave them 3.5 out of 10 for some of their work they did out at that fish kill. I'm going to give you 5.5 out of 10 today. I teach at university. I've talked this over with Kat. We're going to accept a resubmission. It's good. You pass. But you could do better. Let me explain. At the moment, this report covers, it's about nutrients in the Hawkesbury Nepean. It covers the metropolitan part of the Hawkesbury Nepean. What's missing from this? There's all those sewage treatment plants in Western Sydney. I know them well, and it's great because they actually drink the water out of the river at Richmond. It has a nutrient problem. We need improved sewage treatment. This is not a glamorous topic, but it's urgently needed as the population increases. But that crosshatch part is missing. That is the Warragamba catchment. It is part of the Hawkesbury Nepean. Do any of you also live in Sydney or visit or have friends or cousins there? Anyone? Okay. That is extraordinary. Storage, Warragamba Dam, Lake Burragarang, it is an extraordinary resource. There is no big city in the world of 5 million plus that relies for 90% of its supply on one storage. We've got one Warragamba. It was finished in 1960. We're not going to get another one. It is vulnerable to algae. Those big stars are where they're just the 5 biggest sewage treatment plants, and they are pumping out far too much nutrient. So I am happy, EPA, I will re-accept that report if you add this part of the catchment, because in my opinion, we have an urgent problem. It's not my problem. Who owns the environment? I think it's the community. Do you agree? I've worked for many years for the water industry. I was lucky to work at Warragamba Dam. I did the very first plan of management for Warragamba Dam as a water scientist. I got in a bit of trouble because I said we need to act on what they call the upper catchment. That means not the bushland and national park around the dam. Warragamba Dam is highly vulnerable to pollution. Who remembers the cryptosporidium incident? So that's when, in very wet weather, whatever is in the outer catchment, that is the part of the catchment where we have farms and towns, the dam becomes a slow-moving river. And in 2007, we had a blue-green algal bloom that covered something in the order of 40 to 60% of the surface. Warragamba Dam at the wall is extraordinarily deep, 100 metres, and they were able to extract water from well below that. But it's a sign. Those blue-green blooms that you keep getting, and the Cox's River at Lithgow keeps getting, and storages up in the Wallandilly around Goulburn, it's only getting one direction, and that's downstream, and it only gets worse. It's called eutrophication, a build-up of nutrients. And how many people here deal with weeds in the catchment? The nutrients are the food source for that. They add to the weed growth, and there's plenty of problems here with that. Again, not glamorous work, but there are some beautiful sewage outfalls. That's Goulburn. It's kind of like a water feature or a fountain. It's quite impressive. It doesn't flow all the time, then it starts to rumble, and then you have to stand back a bit. We have lots of values for our rivers here: irrigation, drinking water, fish, livestock watering, drinking water. But one of the uses we don't often think about is we use it to get rid of our effluent. Okay, I'm going to have to work quite hard at this because I need you to get your head around this graphic. It's an XY comparison. Nutrient levels down the bottom, and there's a trade-off with how much money you spend on sewage treatment. This is critical. There's going to be questions on this afterwards. They'll be shutting the doors shortly. We can do this at school. You have to have the right answer here. But the EPA has shared this graphic because they're looking to improve the standard of sewage treatment. It is very expensive, but if you spend more, very clever engineers will reduce the amount of nutrient. Can I ask at this point, any engineers here? Good, excellent, excellent. Any difficult questions, send to them. No, there's actually been a revolution in sewage treatment, and what they're achieving, there is a smaller load on the Hawkesbury-Nepean River than there was 40 years ago, because there's incredible advancements. But we need that here, urgently, in my view. So I'm going to explain where I think the Southern Highlands sewage plants are on this curve. If you've got high levels of nutrients being released from the sewage treatment plant, that's cheap. The indicative cost is lower. These levels are actually typical of many of your local sewage treatment plants. Tertiary treatment, more expensive, but less nutrients. And frankly, this is where Europe is going now. And this is where, quite rightly, the EPA is encouraging Sydney Water to go for the lower Hawkesbury-Nepean. Do you follow that? This is what your rivers need. Your rivers aren't just valuable to you. They're valuable for Sydney, and I'm just going to explain some of their values to me that transcend the importance of beautiful water features in your backyard. That is the sewerage outfall for Bowral. Something bizarre about that, so it's very close to the railway bridge. Something bizarre about that, the sewerage outfall is actually reducing the sediment content of the river. Do you see that there's a clean water plume? What you can't see are the nutrient levels. That's the sewage, treated sewage outlet for Mittagong sewage treatment plant. It's discharged and it's a rushing pipe. Don't get too close to it because you'll be breathing in the aerosols and getting inoculated. But that goes into a small tributary of the Natai River. And the Natai River is part of the Greater Blue Mountains World Heritage Area. This makes it an international area of environmental importance. It's a natural environment World Heritage Area, which means since Gough Whitlam signed the agreement with United Nations in 1972, that meant the Commonwealth will act if the state doesn't to protect a matter of national environmental significance. All your rivers are important, but the Natai is really important. It is a beautiful place. EPA, and this is the role. And the EPA are wonderful. They also work well with encouragement. This is kind of a bit boring, perhaps, but I like policy. I like policy that leads to action. Again, show of hands, who likes policy? Who likes good policy? That's the highest percentage I have ever seen in my life. Kat, can you get a photo? Please come to one of my classes. Thank you. You're not in trouble, but your photo has been recorded. EPL. An EPL. It's an Environment Protection Licence. It's not the English Premier League. But each major discharge of wastewater in New South Wales gets one of these. It's called an Environment Protection Licence. Everyone in the industry calls it a pollution licence because it's a bit George Orwell. This provides the accepted by the EPA level of contamination. This is all part of your homework. I want to see notes being taken now. I'm sorry, this is really a bit boring. This is where the rubber hits the road. The EPA give here the acceptable level of contamination in wastewater to be discharged. And I'm particularly looking at nitrogen and phosphorus. That 50% of the time, it has to be 7.5 milligrams per litre or less, and 0.3 with phosphorus. We also need PFAS on the next version of that licence. Anyone agree? Wow. I'm not used to this applause. It's really gratifying. Thank you. So where are we with that licence? Where is it placed on this curve? It's a good curve, and it's what EPA is applying for Western Sydney and Sydney Water, and I totally support them. That's where Bowral STP sits there. Now, that's a combination of the licence and data I've been collecting with Kat, who's done her PhD and platypus research. I think you need to do better than that if you want to address particularly the blue-green algal problems here. Do you agree? EPA don't do that for free. They charge an administration fee. So it's not like you're going to drain the state's coffers, and it's due for review every 5 years, but they will review them if there's an exceptional case. This is up for January. This is your Christmas homework, okay? I want to see submissions come in. I've seen this happen in the Blue Mountains. The Blue Mountains community got a coal mines discharge licence changed. I think you can do this. I have to move along. We've measured water quality only for 3 times. It was a limit of our budget. We wanted to understand the environment that Kat's platypus were living in. We particularly focused on the Wingecarribee. Blue is the concentration, the mean concentration, the average upstream. Red is the concentration coming out of the sewage outfall. The yellow is downstream. Mittagong for total nitrogen is not good. And I don't mean any criticism to the wonderful people that are running these plants. I know they're doing their best. I've got a solution. And there's phosphorus. The dotted line at the bottom are the water quality guidelines, and Water New South Wales, they use as the benchmark. So look down at Goulburn, even upstream is above the safe level. But I've just plotted the EPA 50 percentile for Bowral at the top. Then you look at Bowral, you're doing well, council's doing really well. But you need to do better. PFAS, we've sampled water, sewage. The biggest accumulation we found was in the sediment of the Wingecarribee River at Berrima, and Kat's going to talk more about the Platypus because she found it there. Last year, before Sydney Water released their first results, and very late results, about whether that was PFAS in our drinking water, we knew that there was PFAS here. We don't know what the source is. We don't think it's the sewage. Kat will talk a bit more about that. Here are your other treatment plants. Mittagong is bizarre. At the phosphorus level, brilliant. Nitrogen, not so good. I want to see all your treatment plants move into the top area called special treatment. For the sake of Sydney, for the sake of the platypus, for the sake of the farmers. Do you agree? But Infrastructure Australia has said there's a growing gulf between metropolitan water authorities and rural and regional areas. This is a great example. You deserve better, also because you supply water to Sydney. Here's the money. How much money are you getting out of the water you actually produce? Because Sydney Water is selling it down the river. Here's a maths task. 527,000 megalitres sold at $3 per 1,000 litres. It's about $1.5 billion a year. You need a slice of this pie. They have just got a price increase from IPART, and this financial year they've got a projected revenue of $4.3 billion. For the sake of Sydney Water, you need to be part of that. Does this make sense? I worked at Sydney Water. When the crypto incident happened and there was an inquiry, Sydney Water was split. Water New South Wales became the delivery authority that looked after catchments and storages, and Sydney Water became essentially the retailer. They spend as much money on the desal plant as they do for the water they buy from Water New South Wales. This is a matter for all three levels of government, in my view. I have seen the Blue Mountain sewage system in July 1980 taken from council and given to Sydney Water. And I'm not saying that that should happen here, but we need a solution that's better for the river, in my view. And I'm going to give one more slide. Anyone wants to talk to me about getting their water tank tested, I want to talk to you. Give us your details. If you also have solar cells on your roof, I really need to talk to you. Anyone interested? Okay, thank you.